Startups tend to minimize the discomfort of users switching to a new solution, and they slightly overestimate the value that they add to the customers. Hi, I'm Georgia. I'm a product marketing manager at what3words. This is a geolocation tech company that helps anyone find any 3-meter square in the world with just 3 words. It's a really interesting question. I think the role of product marketing is really becoming a trusted partner for product teams. And specifically for product managers. Largely speaking, product marketing managers are responsible for activities associated with selling the product, but it also has a strategic component. So it means getting involved in the development process as well as early on as possible. And also it manages the go-to-market plan of that, so how it's actually introduced in the market. It's really important to really define product marketing, and quite frankly, it's instrumental in a couple of ways. Number one, it's really helpful in finding that product market fit, and this essentially involves anything from value proposition development, getting a deep understanding of the market, of the customer, of external influences that play a role in the success of that product. Product marketing managers also help a lot in the way the product is positioned and communicated, and it actually has a knock-on impact on achieving the business model fit. In other words, really, the way a product or an idea comes across can really tip the scales in your favor. So even if you're not 100% there, you can actually get people to buy into the vision of the product. So I think that's why it's quite important to have this on board as early as possible. So startups have a fantastic setup for product marketers to really come in and help shape a few things early on. As I mentioned earlier, kind of building a strong understanding of the customer, so their needs, their pain points, how they think, how they speak about the needs versus how they actually act on that, how they behave in the efforts of trying to solve that problem. But it's also really helpful in setting up a framework around how you collect user feedback, how you represent the voice of customer during the development process. Are you actually solving the problem, the real problem for customers, and so on. And I think it's also quite instrumental in testing your MVP and your messaging, because at the end of the day, your product might be great from a technical perspective, but it could miss the target on messaging, and that would really be a pity. And also working closely to size up the market, understand engagement tactics, and so on. I would definitely warn against hiring someone in product marketing and expecting them to run social media, SEO, everything around marketing, and do all things around that. If you absolutely have to, maybe look at a 70-30% ratio, so they actually have time to help you with the strategic bits. So ultimately, it can really help you understand, am I solving, or answer the following questions? Am I solving a painful problem here? Are there any adjacent problems that this solution is helping with? Are people willing to pay for this? Who else is doing this? And am I telling the right story? So I'd say as early as possible before doing serious pitching, I'd say, recommend to reaching out to product marketing professionals in your own network who are passionate about the startup world. You'd be surprised how many consultants there are out there, really, who are willing to lend a helping hand. If we're talking about an early stage startup that's bootstrapping for resources, there's a number of free resources out there that can really help, and quite a few product marketing professionals who might be glad to do even just a bit of pro bono or do a bit of proofreading for you, especially if they resonate with the mission of your startup. There's a couple of mistakes that come to my mind, really. One of them is pitching and then launching a product without testing messaging and the value proposition. Because on paper, you might have a really good problem solution fit, it doesn't really mean people automatically recognize they have a problem or they feel like they actually need your product. So generally speaking, startups tend to minimize the discomfort of users switching to a new solution, and they slightly overestimate the value that they add to the customer. So the way you actually frame your product, the value proposition, and your go-to-market plan really need to be informed by your customer profile and the type of value it adds. And the second one that comes to mind is how product teams leverage these insights, which is quite crucial. So there's a couple of bits here that relying too much on anecdotes, using it as a proxy for actual evidence of how people feel about the problem you're solving. And the second one is relying too hard on data without actually speaking to customers and not picking up on the softer aspects of how people feel when they try to solve the problem, their actual context, the current options they have at hand. Definitely a good understanding of product culture and product thinking, and generally how the product development cycle works. Have a curious, ambitious, very customer obsessed mindset, and love experimenting. So it means having a healthy bias for action and analytical thinking, really, but also the empathy part, right? So there's always the two sides of this coin, and a bit of intuition to read between the lines of what customers say they want and what actually customers do. And other than that, I think just generally really strong interpersonal skills. So informal leadership, working in cross-functional teams with subject matter experts, and being able to leverage all this expertise to get to your objectives.